Well, we can say thank you to Looch, Milan Lucic. Hi there, it's Brett Hornby here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm going to touch upon that Milan Lucic of the Calgary Flames has agreed to waive his no movement clause so he can be exposed to the Seattle Kraken, potentially be exposed and potentially be claimed in the Seattle Kraken Expansion Draft. So hence this setup and why I have this color on for the Seattle Kraken. So I'll talk about in this video is now, with Milan Lucic agreeing to waive his no movement clause, who could potentially be available for the Seattle Kraken from the Calgary Flames that maybe would be claimed, and who do you ultimately think where things stand right now after the NHL trade deadline going into the final week of the regular season? Who do you think the Seattle Kraken is going to take from the Calgary Flames? I think there is going to be a similar situation to what happened ultimately when the Vegas Golden Knights took Derek England in the Vegas Golden Knights back in 2017. But now here in 2021, we're going through it again. And the other thing that has changed for the Calgary Flames when it comes to the expansion draft is we traded away David Rittich and Sam Bennett. So I'm going to say there's probably a little less intriguing players that we could potentially lose to the Seattle Kraken, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, as you want to try to maximize what you have. So I'm going to go over on capfriendly.com, which they have an expansion draft tool that you can play with and look and go through scenarios. And also Cap Friendly is the website to go to when you look at the team salary cap situations. But Milan Lucic agreed to waive his no movement clause, which I'm going to say is critical at potentially protecting another forward that we might not like to want to lose or have to make an under-the-table trade with the Seattle Kraken to say, we'll make this trade if you agree to not take this player. And a couple options that teams have when it comes to who you protect, that there's an option where it's the same rules that applied during the Vegas Golden Knights. And here's a scary thought. The Vegas Golden Knights, they're immune from the expansion draft. So anyone on the Vegas Golden Knights, they don't have to worry about waiving or getting plucked by the Seattle Kraken. And then the Seattle Kraken definitely has a big hill to climb to try to match. I mean, the only thing Seattle can do better than what Vegas Golden Knights did in 2017-18 is win the Stanley Cup. But I still think there's a couple players that I think could potentially be intriguing enough that I think Seattle could take. Could it be Milan Lucic? But a couple options that teams have when it comes to protecting is you can protect a combination of 8 forwards and defensemen and a goalie, or you can protect 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and 1 goalie. I think given the situation for the Calgary Flames, and I think many pundits will agree, we're going to go with the 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and 1 goalie option, which means there's a couple forwards and defensemen that I think will be pretty intriguing that we might have to take a chance on to either A, make an under-the-table deal, or B, just willing to say thanks for your service and good luck in Seattle, just not when we're playing against the Calgary Flames because they're going to be a divisional rival. So when you first look at the goaltender, well, the captain obvious, Jacob Markstrom is definitely going to be protected. He has a no movement clause. We invested too much in Jacob Markstrom to ask him to waive his no movement clause and expose him to the Seattle Kraken. So we're going to protect Jacob Markstrom for sure. I don't think we're going to approach to ask to waive. So the other goalies that are eligible to potentially be claimed, which I do not think we're going to lose a goalie to the Seattle Kraken, because I think there's a couple goalies right away that I think the Seattle Kraken will have available to them in the draft. I'm thinking of potentially a Jake Allen in Montreal and maybe a Casey DeSmith in Pittsburgh. So I do not think we have a goalie that we're likely going to lose, because the only goalies that the Calgary Flames have that's available to the Seattle Kraken is Tyler Parsons, who is a restricted free agent after this season, and Louis Domingue, who is an unrestricted free agent after this season. Louis Domingue has not played much in the organization at all this season, and same with Tyler Parsons, as he's still gritting his teeth in the minors. But I do not think we're going to lose either one of those goalies when it comes to the expansion draft. I mean, the other goalies that are ineligible that haven't had enough time yet, that are still in the systems, Arkin Zagadou and Dustin Wolf, so we don't have to worry about losing those players either. But Jacob Markstrom is definitely going to be the protected goalie, so that's where I think the less intrigue is going to be with the Calgary Flames. Defensemen, we do have some interesting decisions to make when it comes to the who to protect when it comes to defensemen. And I think the Calgary Flames are only going to protect 3 defensemen so they can protect 7 forwards. Noah Hannafin and Rasmus Anderson are obvious. We have to protect those 2 as our young defensemen. So who is that 3rd defenseman that you would be willing to protect? If I were to make the call, I actually would protect Chris Tanev because he's the younger veteran over Mark Giordano. I mean, Mark Giordano still has 1 more year left on his contract, and he is an unrestricted free agent in 2022. Chris Tanev, we definitely have invested too much in Chris Tanev when it comes to the free agent frenzy last season. $4.5 million a season for the next 4 years. He is an unrestricted free agent in 2024. I would protect Chris Tanev because he's younger than Mark Giordano. So I am willing to take the chance and expose Mark Giordano because he is still a top defenseman, top 4 defenseman, and maybe the Seattle Kraken might be appealed to take Mark Giordano as a veteran defenseman to put on a young team to provide leadership. I mean, keep in mind, it was just a couple years ago he won the Norris Trophy, but I'm also thinking that Seattle is going to look at younger players, and I think there's one player in particular on the Calgary Flames that I think Seattle is going to pick for the same reason why Vegas picked Derek England in 2017. So the defenseman that would be available based on the number of games they played in the season, as they played 27 games out of 54, that also makes you eligible, other than Mark Giordano. Oliver Shillington might be potentially available for the Calgary Flames. Good for the Seattle Kraken, I meant to say. I mean, he's a young defenseman that is still in the system. He's still a solid, everyday NHL defenseman, but he could use a change of scenery as well. And a young defenseman, could the Seattle Kraken take Oliver Shillington? How about Nikita Nesterov? I doubt it. I think he's kind of been in and out of the lineup, but I think Mark Giordano and Oliver Shillington may potentially be available for the Seattle Kraken. How about maybe an Alex Petrovic or a Michael Stone? I mean, for a veteran felt, but I think there's going to be better options for the Seattle Kraken. But Mark Giordano, I could see potentially get claimed, but I think there's a forward that I'm thinking of that Seattle's going to take for the same reason for Derek England. So now when it comes to the forwards, well, now that Milan Lucic has agreed to waive his no movement clause, he will be available potentially to the Seattle Kraken, but he has an albatross of a contract with bonuses attached, so that it makes it a much more heavier contract. He is still a useful player for the Calgary Flames, and still thankful that Milan Lucic has agreed to waive his no movement clause. Usually 9 times out of 10, especially with the Vegas draft and now with the Seattle Kraken draft, that players who have a no movement clause have agreed to waive it, thinking that they're unlikely going to get claimed because of their contract and understand the business. And definitely Milan Lucic definitely understands the business. He could still potentially get claimed despite the contract because Seattle close to Vancouver. Milan Lucic's from Vancouver. But there's one more player that I'm going to touch on that I think will eventually get claimed, and I'll ask who do you think will be claimed. But when it comes to the forwards they're going to protect, well, you definitely got to protect Matthew Tkachuk. He's definitely the future. Same with Johnny Gaudreau. I don't think that's where everything stands right now. We're going to protect Sean Monahan. Those are definitely the obvious forwards to protect. The fourth forward is definitely Michael Backlund. We're the one best two-way forwards. Those forwards will all be appealing. If they're available, we're going to protect them. And then the other 3 forwards that definitely we are going to protect is Elias Lindholm, Andrew Mangiapane, and Dylan Dubé. That's where we're thankful that Milan Lucic agreed to waive his no movement clause, because if he decided to not waive, he would have been protected at the expense of potentially Matthew Tkachuk, Johnny Gaudreau, Sean Monahan, Michael Backlund, Elias Lindholm, Andrew Mangiapane, and Dylan Dubé. So, who is available for the Seattle Kraken besides Milan Lucic? Well, How about Derek Ryan? I personally think he is going to be the player that would likely get claimed by the Seattle Kraken for the simple reason that the reason why the Vegas Golden Knights ultimately picked Derek England, as Derek England actually decided to make Vegas his home. He lived in Las Vegas, so that was kind of, the natural player to pick, and he was kind of the unofficial captain of the Vegas Golden Knights. That, trying to get some players local to the area. Well, Derek Ryan, well, he is from Washington State. He is from Spokane, which is still quite a ways away from Seattle, but it's closer to home. I could see Derek Ryan get claimed for that reason. Other players, Josh Levo is an unrestricted free agent, but I doubt, he would go get claimed by the Seattle Kraken. Other players, you got Jochen Nordstrom, Brett Ritchie, and Dominic Simon. Those are the other players, and they're just depth players right now that I think Seattle has better options, but I think the best options that the Seattle Kraken have, given who we're likely going to protect, and the fact that we trade Sam Bennett and David Riddick at the NHL trade deadline, Milan Lucic is potentially an option for the Seattle Kraken if they're willing to take his salary on for the next 2 seasons. And Mark Giordano has 1 more year left on his contract for an aging defenseman. But I think Derek Ryan is going to be the player that the Seattle Kraken is going to claim for the same reason as I mentioned with England or the Vegas Golden Knights. But I'm going to say, who do you think the Calgary Flames are going to protect? What option they're going to go with, and who do you think the Calgary Flames are going to likely lose to the Seattle Kraken when it comes to the expansion draft? And are you willing to make an under-the-table deal to, let's say, not lose a Mark Giordano or Milan Lucic? You never know. But that's who I think will likely be protected. But I'm going to say it would definitely been a big price to pay if Milan Lucic decided to not waive his no-movement clause. Because some other, mock drafts that some people have done, they actually think Dylan Dubé could be the player that the Seattle Kraken could claim, and I don't think that would be the price we want to pay to lose one of the younger players that is still part of the future. And then keep in mind, if there is any more trades that might happen, and I think there's definitely going to be a lot more trades ahead of the official draft. There might be some trades made. I know that a couple years ago with the Vegas Golden Knights, that when the Calgary Flames acquired Mike Smith from the Arizona Coyotes, that had the Seattle or the Vegas Golden Knights expansion draft in consideration, because the Arizona Coyotes were willing to protect. We're trying to maximize an asset, so there might still be potentially, because they had Mike Smith, and I believe they had Darcy Kemper at that time. Or no, they didn't have Darcy Kemper, but we traded Chad Johnson to them, so they had someone to protect at the expansion draft. So there might be some of those deals, and who knows, maybe some of the forwards that the Calgary Flames have might get traded to someone else so that they can protect those forwards. Kind of just be a little bit of a punk to the Seattle Kraken, give them less options. But I'm going to say there is some intriguing players for the Seattle Kraken from the Calgary Flames, now with Milan Lucic agreeing to waive, but it's the bad contract that I think they're likely not going to touch it. But now with Sam Bennett and Dave Riddick being traded out, I think we have less intriguing players that won't hurt as much if we lose it. But I personally think Derek Ryan is likely going to be the player that's going to get claimed, just to have that local flavor for the Seattle Kraken. But I can potentially maybe see him Mark Giordano, because I'm not willing to expose Chris Tanev, because we made too much investment in him. So anyways, I like to say, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey, home of the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, I mostly do talk Calgary sports on my each channel, like recap games and stories, and I'll just touch upon that Milan Lucic has agreed to waive his no-movement clause. So he is available for the Seattle Kraken in the expansion draft, but I don't think he is going to get claimed because of his contract. But thanks to him waiving, I don't think we're going to lose a young forward, because I think that's where the intriguing players are for the Calgary Flames. But the other things I also do on my YouTube channel is I do personal vlogs, attempt to comedy, and I also do share my experience when I'm on the road or a sporting event. And I've also been doing some more vlogging on the go, so if that all sounds like it'd be interesting to watch, to follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey, you know what you need to do, just make sure you like, subscribe. I also have my other social media links down in the description below. So, who would you protect in the expansion draft for the Seattle Kraken now that Milan Lucic has agreed to waive? And who do you think the Calgary Flames are going to lose to the Seattle Kraken without factoring in any changes between now and before the expansion draft and any under-the-table deals that we say, hey, we'll make this trade with you if you agree to not take this player? So I want to say thanks for watching, Go Flames Go, and I'll see you in the next video.